Hello, my friends. Welcome to a brand new idea. This is going to be a micro wildlife podcast that we're going to discuss all things wildlife, fieldcraft, but also I want to put a little bit of a spin on how Simon's kind of branched out and how he's had hopefully some success, and hopefully it was more planned success than random success. But Simon, thank you so much for the time. Thank you so much for joining us. But for those who don't know who you are, what do you do? What do you get up to? How did you sort of get into wildlife as an idea, as a concept, when it comes to capturing these obviously wonderful experiences that you get to capture?
Yeah, I mean, I've always been into wildlife, sort of from a very young age, and I think you've got to have when you start anything, the love comes first. You know, the appreciation, not just for making films, but the appreciation of the subject. It makes everything so much easier. Having done, worked in design agencies, and you're working on the other side where you're told to pretend that you know this product, but actually then anyway. But yeah, nature. I grew up in nature. I was an illustrator, and I've always sort of done design work and creative, and just the two kind of crossed over really. I always used cameras, and yeah, because I had this great opportunity to start filming the stuff that I love watching and then making stories about them, which is even better. It's one thing filming wildlife. It's another thing actually telling a story about how you film that wildlife. And I just find it a bit more interesting than just pointing a camera and saying, I use f2.6. but it is all part, yeah.
I think it's interesting, right? Because in the wildlife world, there's, I guess, two sides to every story, right? There's the technical, how is this possibly done side, that like the gearheads and like us that care about cameras and stuff are going to be like, oh my god, this is shot on like an area and it's shot really well and etc. But I think there's I guess in some ways the stuff happens to happen first, which is what I would call the fundamental storytelling elements, right? How did you? I mean, was there like a first film where you really started? And we'll get into some of your newer stuff. I know that is a lot more structured, but was there a first film that you were like, hold on, I've actually kind of really understood my arcs here. I really understood those beats that I'm looking to tell that story of either a species or an environment, etc.
Yeah, I mean, there definitely was a first, and actually, it came from. I grew up fishing. I was a fisherman, and I've worked within the industries and in the design and marketing teams for various different fishing brands. And actually, when I went fishing, it's a joyful sitting on the bank doing nothing, having a beer, relaxing, watching nature. It's all that lovely stuff. And actually, as I started thinking, well, maybe I could vlog it, make a film out of it. Again, how much paint can you watch dry? Do you know what I mean? It's fishing it's not one of those things where it's like it's happening all the time. You kind of have to fill the gaps in. And so I found I did a 14-part series, a vlog series about going fishing and just telling the story from when you woke up until you packed up. And you kind of intersperse it with character and a few comedy moments and some real moments. There's a lot of times you don't catch in fishing, and lots of people don't document that. But actually, what I found actually putting that in the mix, people kind of respected you a bit more, and it was a bit real. That was the difference. What
you're saying, Simon, is you're not a perfect fisherman. That's why.
Oh God! Oh no! I'm not a perfect fisherman. I'm not a perfect cameraman. I'm probably not a perfect husband. My wife would probably say that differently, but that pinnacle of being a perfectionist. I think that I actually had a conversation with somebody this weekend about that, and from all the feedback I get from films and people loving it, I'm still miles where I want to be. I know it. I can feel it in my head that I want to be a filmmaker, and the stuff that I'm doing now is just a journey to get there. And that perfection, I don't think that will ever happen. I'm not going to be one of those guys who says, I know 100% about cameras. I know 100% about wildlife. This is how you do it. Because once you take that bit, once you've done that, it's like when you climb the highest mountain, you've done it. What do you do next? There's nowhere else to go. And because of this, technology is always changing, and because wildlife gets even more difficult every time I get close to it, it just, it's a great challenge, and I like that whole thing. Yeah.
I guess it's difficult, right? Because I think sometimes people think, and I know you've now gone abroad to do wildlife capturing, right? But
Yeah.
I think sometimes we look at, the David Attenboroughs of the world, or maybe some of your newer films, etc. We think, I have to go to X place, Y place, right, to be
Yeah.
able to see and capture. I mean, what would you say to someone who's maybe listening to this who likes it as a hobby, likes the idea, and even if it's just like using binoculars, not even necessarily capturing, but like
Yeah.
actually witnessing these wildlife moments, maybe the first time they see a barn owl, or first time they see a fox or a badger, or, some of these more, I guess, unique, but also like known in the UK species, right? Because
Yeah.
I think a lot of people, their starting point isn't going to be the safari. It isn't going to be, going to the Altamont, where, these further fetched places that I'm sure we'll get on to. But,
Yeah.
I mean, what would you say to those people who, like, are more looking to, I guess, get their kind of boots on the ground, starting to build some experience, really understand the fieldcraft element of, okay, well, how do I know what's around me?
Yes. That's the first part, is to understand what's around you close. Like in my village, I have found so much, and a lot of it is about time, isn't it? How much time you get to do. Not everybody can go away to these far places. And actually, do you know what? Do you need to even do that when you've got the most amazing foxes and badgers and owls and all sorts of these wonderful things around us? And those are kind of like a starting point for you as a photographer or a videographer. The first thing you do is you find what's close and really what's easy. We could make it sound more polished than that if we wanted to, but when you think, actually, I've got a weekend or I've got a Saturday, I've got to find something. There's a park over here where I've seen badgers or I've seen fox, whatever it is. You're going to start there. And the thing is, the beautiful thing about that is that it's close, takes you no time to get there, gives you more time to think about what you're doing. It doesn't necessarily mean you have to record it, but just to watch something, like you're saying about binoculars, just going somewhere, watching something wild, it's just the most awesome thing ever. But also what it does is you're kind of almost training yourself as well. If you watch a fox, if you watch a deer, watch what it does, watch its movements, watch what it does when it hears a sound. Does it freak? Does it move? They will give you pointers for actually when you want to really go out there and try and film it. Understanding behaviour is one of the key factors for any wildlife photographer, videographer, because then you can second guess what it's going to do next, where it's going to be, how it's going to act. And yeah, I just think that you've got to have that appreciation first of nature. And that is, even if it's on your doorstep or if it's in Outer Mongolia, like you're saying.
I guess there's an age old, right? Like, you need to go out at sunset. You need to go out at sunrise, right? To get the best light, to get the best chance. Is that technically true?
It is. I don't know if it's technically true. I think it's a choice. People do love that, the golden light, whether it be dawn or dusk. That both also the most challenging as well. I mean, obviously, people say that when it's the brightest in the day, you get that harsh light and it's not a nice. I don't mind it actually. I get an even light, especially if it's cloudy. If I'm filming an S-Log3 or a flat profile, I get that nice flat color, and it's just I get all the detail that I need. When it comes to doing morning or evening, say for instance, if you're waiting for the herds of deer to turn up in the first thing in the morning, 6 o'clock in the morning, you've got not a lot of light, and unless you're very lucky and you've got a low light camera, it's a challenge. It is a real challenge, but it definitely is. It is a favoured time of the day, isn't it? Even both end to end, dawn to dusk. And I like the evening better. I like that golden as it falls down and it sort of casts a shadow and all that stuff. But yeah, I don't put too much emphasis on that though.
I think I understand why people do it, and I think in my own experience, there is a level of behaviour that you are more likely to see, and I think that's actually mostly to do with the fact that especially if you're doing it locally, it's less likely to be, the animals themselves are less likely to be disturbed by dog walkers, etc., etc., etc. Right? I think there's a thing to say there, but I wouldn't say that you always have to capture at those golden lights, right? Because I think some of my personal favourite wildlife moments have actually been in like 11 o'clock in the morning or like 2 o'clock in the afternoon. You know what I mean? Like, it's not necessarily been the perfect situation. Like, if you can try and engineer when you go out to be that early, sure. But I would argue you need to scout it first. You need to know what's around first. You know what I mean? You need to do that fieldcraft and that work first. So especially when I'm maybe going to a new nature reserve or go into a new environment, I will expect to get nothing, right? And if I get something, hey, that's
a great mindset though. I use that very similar mindset, that I would go somewhere with the idea of actually, being unsuccessful, and then anything, blue tit or robin, something. It's something, and I like that strategy. It's almost like you're kind of trying to keep that momentum going. You want to be driven to this place. The other thing as well is morning and night. Obviously, if you're there in the first thing in the morning, just before that sun rises, yes, that light thing is there, and that's then that kind of like art scene. You want it to be that perfect light or the backlight, or you get the glow. But actually, just to film something is an art in itself. To find anything is an art in itself, and to get it to stand still in front of a lens, well, it's just not luck, but there is a lot of luck there. So I think things like, maybe technically wise, the light is a kind of a secondary part of the experience. You want to find something first. And obviously, if you start in really early in the morning, you've got more of the day. And like you say, if birds and mammals and whatever species are more comfortable in the morning because it's quieter, or late in the evening, you will definitely get it. But I think that the light thing comes as a sort of secondary part to actually just finding something. Especially if you're new to this as well. If you're new to it, just go out there, watch this, whether it be in the morning, in the afternoon, whatever it is. And then you can start crafting the light, and how you work with the light and how you work with the movement. And then you can start playing with slow-mo and all the other stuff you can do. So, but yeah.
Do you need to, I don't know, I guess there's a misconception sometimes that you need to be fully ghillie suited up and you need to be kind of completely covered in camo and blended into a tree or a bush, right? In your experience, do you need to be like that?
I have worn camo before, not full camo. I have maybe one or two times, but to be honest with you, there's enough out there to hide you. And I tend to go out wearing green or just sort of natural colours anyway. But it's really not that I want to sit there in white and yellow, but as long as you're still, you can wear quite a lot and get away with a lot of things, and just sitting next to a bush, as long as you're still, that's fine. It's okay. Yeah, fluorescence probably wouldn't work, but. It does help, and I know a lot of photographers who do wear, the full suits, and they probably could get really close. But I've been close to a lot of animals that you're using, and you can always tell that by the lens that you're using. I have got, that big 400 to 800 reach, which is wonderful, but I kind of sit maybe 100 to 400. So you still have to be quite close. And they're a bit faster as well in aperture to the big lens. So I prefer to use them. But yeah, I don't think it's super necessary. Maybe not, bright whites and stuff. Yeah. Unless you're in a snowy situation.
Yes, absolutely. No, I think it's like, it's kind of the ideal light question, right? Like, when you're starting out, don't overthink it. Go and start doing fieldcraft, right? I would argue, someone who's got better fieldcraft will normally be able to get more shots than someone who doesn't, right? And someone who maybe doesn't have the lens, right? Okay, well, how can you make that work? So if you only have a 300mm, right, which I think is probably common in most starting beginner cases, we don't always have like a big telephoto lens necessarily. Okay, how can you utilize that 300mm to maybe not get like as DL or as telephoto, etc., but like maybe think about, okay, well, how can I use this as a stepping stone and still get images, still get usable footage, etc., to build my technique to then go to, when I can afford to do so, a 800mm, a 600mm, a 700mm, whatever it is.
Yes, yeah, yeah. I think there is there's a moment, I think, but like you're saying, that 70 to 300 lens that we all started with, it's the lower end bracket in price wise, still a great lens. Like, I can use that now. That's still a great lens, but you are limited. You can pop into APS-C mode if you've got a camera that can do that. But if you don't, then fieldcraft comes into it massively. And I can say that because the guy who I used to go out a lot with, who looked after the deer and managed estates, his art was short lens, but to sit there against a tree for 2 hours and things just come to him, like it's magic. And you end up not needing that big lens. Obviously we'll get onto to my recent trip. But again, I didn't need the big lens in that way. I needed a short lens. And that's the thing with nature as well. Nature is not, you're not going to go there and say, well, I'm going to see a badger at 40 foot, everything, it could be miles away. Unless you want that landscape and just a little black and white dot in there. But I would definitely say that, you don't have to have the biggest, brightest lens on the market. Like you said, if you've got good fieldcraft, that takes, I'm not even close to it. I've got, again, we talk about perfection thing. I've got years to learn about fieldcraft. And I'm looking forward to it. And I think anybody starting in this, pick up your lens. If you've got a 50mm and that's all you've got, go and sit in a glade and just sit there and see what comes. Put a stump in front of you, put some bit of feed on it, see what comes. Do you know what I mean? You can. There's all sorts of ways you can, create your image or frame your spot. But yeah, I think there's time. People just need to not be too, to hurry this thing. Have patience. That's a good thing to have.
I completely agree, and I think for me sometimes, especially at the start, everyone wants that golden light, perfect moment image, beautiful background blur, etc., etc. But I think for me, it's something that you will eventually, if you go out enough, consistently enough, you learn your environment enough, you do the fieldcraft enough, you in some ways, actually, I'd argue, build trust with your local environment, local wildlife, etc. You might get that gifted moment, right? Just a very quick story. I was filming a project about a year ago, and I was consistently up at Grovely Woods, right? And I was walking back, watching the sunset, was locked off, filming the sunset, big telephoto lens, big sun. Next thing I know, flies past. I'm like, what the hell's that? It ended up being a kestrel that landed in a tree, and this must have been like 10 feet, 20 feet away from me. And it ends up not even noticing me at all because I'm stood there. It's not bothered by me. It's trying to look for food or etc. And it just ends up landing like basically a stone's throw away from my camera on the floor and catches something in front of me. And I was like, the only reason why I'm here to be able to capture this is because I've been here consistently, right? There's no lens, there's no this, there's no, you know what I mean? There's something else outside of I did the days, I did the hours, right? And that's why I use that story, because it's like there's no, yes, it's lucky, okay, but I also went out every single day for 2 months, you know what I mean? Like whenever the weather was good, you know what I mean? So it's like yes, okay, but actually I'm stacking the odds in my favour there. But the question I was going to ask you though is a more technical one, which is we can obviously extend our lenses, right? And there's trade-offs for that. Do you extend yours? Do you shoot natively? Like why do you? And if you do extend, why do you?
Yeah. So I've got a 1.4 extender, which I bought for a faster 7200 actually, just to kind of get a little bit of extra reach. But I don't extend my big lenses because they're not fast enough. I'm basically using 6.3 to 7.1. If I drop on the 1.4 converter, you'll end up with just black. It's dark, especially like we were saying in the morning and evening. It's a hard thing to use. I use a low light camera, which is a fantastic camera, but I want to try and keep as much of that light coming in as possible. I think if I had to do it, would I extend? I wouldn't extend the big one. I just want to get a bit closer. I'll go a bit closer. I'll walk with my legs and just get a bit closer. But yeah, but I know people who use the teleconverters and they do a good job. I think the technology's sort of caught up and the autofocus is a lot better. And again, I always watch lots of sort of films of people using it and talking about how good they are. My own experience, it was good. It's still a slower process, I think, especially from the light as well. It just, can really work against you in low light. So, yeah.
I think it's a preference thing. I also think it's kind of down to your tripod as well, right? Especially when you're shooting, and also to an extent, what is the scene you're shooting in, right? Are you shooting owls and it's basically going to be mostly dark most of the time? Then yeah, probably not. But then also again, it comes back to that. What mindset did you use, or what fieldcraft do you have, and how are you moving, and when are you moving, and like where are you placed, etc. In comparison to like the same analogy we used earlier about the 70-300 thing, right? Actually, maybe I can't get close or the really detailed stuff that I want because I physically can't get close to this owl for a million different reasons. But actually, why don't I then switch into like here's an environmental, right? And I guess maybe this is more photography, but a quick question, I guess. Would you rather have an environmental shot of your perfect animal, right? Whatever you're there to look for and capture, or would you crop the image to still get that portrait-esque shot, even if that meant lower quality or or perceivably lower quality in some ways? Because some people, it's quite online. I feel it's quite controversial in some ways because some people are very against cropping.
Yeah, I have no problem with cropping. I come from graphic design and I come from buying photography, and cropping is part of the world. You know what I mean? Like to get that frame. Personally, I want to frame something, and if I can do that, like when you've got something in that view, you can see it, but you want to put it on the third, and you want to put it up a bit, and it's just when you get that right. It's very irregular. I do get that right, but when you do get that right, it's such an achievement thing, and I think I would rather take the environment to show where that subject is. I like the colours that it's in, and again, that's fieldcraft, but it's also knowing where to be if that bird lands there. Where's the sun, or what's in the way of that shot that you want. Again, that you're kind of going to the next stage again. It's not just seeing a bird. It's then you want the bird to do a handstand and then sing a song. But yeah, I like to see a bird in an environment. There are times though when you think, I filmed a hoopoe in Africa, but an African hoopoe. And they've got a lovely crest on the top of the back of the head here. And so you kind of got to go in on that. And that's the detail shot you want. Obviously, it'd be nice if you could shoot that with a very,
a massive lens.
I'd love to film just something short. I'd like it just to be here in front of me. But, again, and I had cropped my one because I just want that as a detail. But one day I will get that shot when it's a bit closer. Maybe I need to wear more camo for that one. Maybe, I don't know.
Perhaps. But since we last spoke, you've, correct me if I'm wrong, you've done 2 major trips, and you've gone to Bird Fair, right? I want to start with Bird Fair, right? Firstly, why? Outside of it seems like fun, right? And I'll be honest, if it was like not the other end of the country, literally, I'd probably have done the same. So what was the objective going into Bird Fair, right? Were you going there to say, this is a good idea from a networking point of view, this is a good idea from a content point of view, and that was solely the reason? Or was it actually you were invited? Or I would love to...
Yeah, of course. I'd heard about it. I can't actually remember where, probably for an ad, I'd seen it come up, and I wanted to make a vlog about it. I wasn't invited to do it. I contacted Penny and Tim, who run the event, and just said, do you mind if I film it? And they gave me a press badge, and so that people weren't just thinking that I was some stalker or something. And so I just vlogged the first one, just walked around, showed people what's at the event. And I say the objective was, selfishly, was for me, really, just to sort of show people what actually this was at the show. And I think then from that first one, they obviously got some great response for that, which was really nice. And then, like you said, the networking side, you can't mistakenly, there's so many good people there, and they're all such nice people, and they want to talk to you. And if you're not horrible, and you can get a lot out of the good connections, be it the public, the people, the speakers, and then obviously the show event people themselves as well. But so a lot of it was just done for me, and I still do it for me because actually I like going to the show and I like seeing what's new. But I think they are. I've lent on them so much, and sort of said to them, do you know anybody who does safari? Do you know anybody who does something in Estonia? And they're just brilliant. I love them.
I was just saying, because that was my next question. Did you, and feel free not to share anything you're not comfortable with, but like for me, I think it'd be really interesting to hear, and I know we've had some conversations about it, so I kind of know the answer, but it's more for the audience's sake, I guess.
Yeah.
About like, how did you then go about the 3 films that you've done, where you, I guess in some ways it would be go to capture, like how does that work? Like tangibly, how does it work? Like does money change hands? Does like people, like how does it get pitched? Like, because for me, I'm like selfishly kind of interested, but also I think it's really interesting to sort of hear sometimes about those inner workings behind the scenes, because to an extent from their side, it's a massive, great piece of advertising. Sure.
Yes.
But did you go and pitch it? Was it like a collaborative discussion? Like how did that sort of happen?
I think so. The first major trip I got from the Global Bird Fair connection was Taiwan. And so I got an email from one of the stands who were at the show. And it actually wasn't from that brand. It was a director who said, I've got a show to put on for the tourist board for Taiwan to encourage birders to come into Taiwan. And he said, I saw your Global Bird Fair piece and I've seen what you do on your own social media. Would you like to come and give it a go? And then I said, no, go away. No, I didn't really. I said, yes, please. I said, yes, please. And at that point, I actually didn't even ask about money. I just thought that's such a cool thing to do. I had an inkling that it was a job. So that was an actual commission for me to go over there, film 10 endemic species. And then I made a vlog on the side. So I made the documentary for them, and that went off and won its award and done its thing. And I did the voiceover for that, and they had all my film bits in it, which was cool. And then on the side, I did the vlog of me doing that as well. which is, I'm not saying it's an easy thing, but it's an easy thing. Like, as you say, you're just filming in the background, chatting with the camera, putting in those beautiful creatures, and off you go. So that was a paid job. The other two major films that I've done have just been free holidays. So I actually paid for the flights for both the holidays, but I didn't actually pay for the actual experience itself. And it's something that, to be honest with you, I wouldn't be able to afford myself. I wouldn't have that opportunity just to go out there and spend silly money on a safari. We all know how much safaris cost. And because I only own 30 pence a week, that's how much I earn, I could never afford it. And it's an opportunity that I just could not say no to. It's putting two of the most amazing things that I want to do. I want to make films. I want to see wildlife. And with that opportunity, yeah.
I get, no, absolutely. I mean, I think it sounds like a dream come true for many either wannabe filmmakers or wannabe film photographers, etc. But I guess then it's because there's a lot of I guess unsaid costs when you do things like that, right? Like you think it's going to be, let's just put a number on it and say 2k, right? Even if you're not paying for anything when you're there, but it ends up being like 6, right? For X and Y reason. And I guess, do you have to hit a certain threshold, right, in regards to viewership size and etc. for like those opportunities to arise, or is it more actually you just have to have the mindset and the confidence and the ability to go and sort of, I can't think of a better term outside of sell what you can do for that organization, that tourist board, etc. You know what I mean? Like, I guess put yourself forward as a hey, look, I love doing this. I would love to do something, or is it a mix of both?
It is a bit of a mix of both. I think now that I'm in my old age, my creative old age, I've got to that point of knowing, and I suppose this might come back to my marketing and creative background as well, of what sells. Do you know what I mean? It's not, if I'm just speaking to camera and just saying, look at this, I'm doing this and it's brilliant, and that's not going to sell in my eyes. My character doesn't do that. I want to show people, if you've got that money, or if you've got that time, or if you can do this, this is what can happen. If you go to Tallinn for 35 quid on a flight, get a bus down here for 25 quid, spend £200 for a few days in the most amazing hide, and then go home. It all sits under a threshold. If I can then show that video's done like 100,000 views now, which is amazing. And all of that will come back for the venue, which is what I really want. And selfishly, of course, I want people to see it and see me and go, oh, well, I want him to do that for me now, which is kind of what's happened with the Africa thing. So...
I'm glad we're on that 100k one. Did you plan it to do well? Like, did you were like when you were editing it, you were sat in the edit going, yeah, actually, this actually, you sometimes when you have an edit or you have a piece, you're like, this is actually really good, right? I didn't think, like, when you film it, sometimes I've done pieces sometimes, and I step back from it after the edit before I release it, and I go, actually, hold on, that's actually quite good.
Yeah.
It like kind of accidentally, you know what I mean? Like, you're so engrossed in it, and you're like, this is amazing, this experience is wonderful, I got to see all this other thing. You're like, hold on, I've actually created something really good here. I guess the question that then comes from that is, was that reaction, did that reaction happen with what either one or all three?
Yeah.
And then if so, were you expecting it to, quote, explode as well as it did?
No, like I was saying before, if you kind of don't expect something, anything will do. I mean, I'm not very good at selling myself in that way. I mean, I know I can do the job, and I've done it for a long time. I just don't, like you say, when you're editing and you sit there and you get to the end, you're obviously bored because you've watched it 7,000 times because you've
Oh,
recut
there
it,
we go again.
music, and you fast forwarding it all the way through. No, the point when you upload it and put it over to the customer, and they come back and go, "That was really good, excellent, thank you very much," uh, and I'm always happy with it because it was an experience, and I love the whole storytelling side of it on any edit as well. And we had that conversation in our last one about talking about adding sound and music and all that stuff. And I love that construction thing where you not. It's like a painting, isn't it? Like you just think, okay, it's a little bit there, and a little bit there, sound like that.
Or it's a
And
little
I
bit too
love that.
much.
Yeah. And then you end up pulling out with it. There were many times like when I've built this edit, I had 10 hours filmed from Africa, and I thought, how the hell am I going to do it? I'm going to put this in 2 films. And actually, when I cut and did the full piece to an hour and a half, I just sat there and thought, I can't put this out. It's just too long. So cut it out. And then just compress this thing into this monster thing, which was, and then when it got to the end of that film, and actually, even before it went to the customer, I liked it. I didn't think it will do. The Estonia one, I don't know why it's done. I guess it was just some nice birds on there, nice environments. It's something different. I think it again, and I know we were talking about doing that local thing here. You can film in your garden and do all that stuff, but I think people just like the adventure, and if it's something different, I think you'll get that spike. You'll just get that little extra interest. So yeah, I'm never kind of at that point where I think this is going to be gold. I'm going to get an Oscar for this. It's more about, thank God I've done that. I'm going to post it now, set the marketing to run from 6 weeks to 6 weeks, and then I'm thinking about my next adventure. So, but yeah.
I guess I'm so glad you mentioned marketing, because I think sometimes as filmmakers we're so focused on the final piece, right? What thought? I mean, this is kind of a two-pronged question. Like, how much thought goes into actually marketing the film? Like, and do you do it afterwards? Would be the my do you do it afterwards or do you do it before?
Yeah. So marketing for me, so because I do it full time, so we have a product that comes to market. We have 6 weeks in, 6 weeks out. So it's all prep, gets to that point. Then you do the after sell thing. With my stuff, obviously, because it hasn't been filmed yet, I've got a plan for it. I've got to make a teaser, a trailer, a second trailer, and then I've got to have a collection of assets to build up to that point of release. When it's released, let it swim on the top of the surface for a while, and as it starts to sink, then add those other assets in just to keep bringing it back up. And then, there's a few tricks that I use with spending through Google partnerships and things like that as well, and a few nice ones that I've kind of just recently found out as well, which are helping. Even doing things like publicizing it on Reddit and putting it onto the 7,000 platforms that you're doing. It's not just creating a trailer. You create it in the 3 different sizes, and so there's a lot of thought that does go into it. And I try to do a structure for each of the main releases. But again, it depends also how it's running. If it's really good and it's like I say, the Estonia one just kept going and going. And I just thought, I'll break down a few small pieces just to keep that going. But it must have just hit a spike. I don't know. It's very good. I'm just happily riding that wave, to be honest with you. But
I think, I mean, like, you can sit here, I guess, and say, like, we're going to algorithmically understand it, and we're going to try and see, I can sit here and say, oh, it's because the hook was really powerful and you had retention tactics and all this. But I think in reality, as a filmmaker, sometimes the only ways you get to understanding all those things is because you've done 1,000 reps, right?
Yes.
And I think, looking at someone who found some of your UK-based content when I was starting to think about the idea of becoming a wildlife videographer, and then built a relationship with you, and then started watching these other pieces that are completely, I hope you don't take this to offense, but completely different and completely to a different level from
Yeah.
the stuff you were previously doing.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
really interesting to watch from an outsider to see your progression, right? To
Yeah.
go
Yeah.
from, okay, like this was a kind of a seed of an idea, and I guess
Yeah.
that's what I hope other people who watch your stuff and connect with what you do
Yeah.
feel, right? And I think
Yeah.
that's maybe the key on. There's something that no one can cheat, right? I guess
No.
this is the same way, right? Because a lot of marketing and a lot of social is like 5 ways to triple your views overnight and all this. I get why, I get it. I do. I get it's the game, da da da.
Yeah.
But it's frustrating sometimes, right?
Oh, it is. Yeah.
Because yes, maybe it worked for them, and yes, etc. But actually, what they don't talk about is the fact that you've been doing it for 6 years.
Yeah.
You were doing it
Exactly.
for 10 years, right?
Yeah.
But I
think
guess
that
no,
it's an art. There's an art to it, and there is a lot of theory and structure behind it as well. I say, I've been in design and creative marketing for 30 years, so if I can't do it myself, there's something very wrong. And I think when you get to that point, and probably filmmakers don't get this, probably more YouTube, more this generation coming in of who know they have to keep things going, even if it's not like trailers and teasers and follow-ups and stuff. They're probably just going to make something else, and they'll put another thing up, and it's a continuation of keeping that momentum going. Whereas with what I do, it's more, I'm going to put this out every 3 months. That it'll be a big thing, and by that time, the algorithm will just drop me off like a brick, and then it comes back in again, which is kind of what it's doing. I haven't quite worked out why that is, but maybe I'm in the good books, and that's cool. But then saying that, actually, I have taken on, a sponsor and looking for other sponsors as well who can give me more time to make more of this stuff. And I think that will certainly help the algorithm for me anyway, just to keep more stuff coming in. But yeah, and it's not, probably like yourself, it's probably not one of those things where it's not a creative challenge. I don't find it's a creative challenge to do it. If you give me a subject and you give me days, I'll just go and do it. And I'll find if it's a cultural thing or if it's a wildlife piece or whatever it is, yeah. I just need, I need help, no, I need backup.
no, absolutely. I mean, I think it's something which naturally has the kind of ebb and flow of as you learn to do it, right? Like I've always been of the understanding that you're either learning or you're succeeding, right? And it's the same with YouTube, right? When a video or a social post or something doesn't do well, either like tangibly if it's targeted towards a business, right? Like it's not giving me the return on the time energy I put into it. Okay, well, why is that? Or if it's more audience growth side, so in a lot of the worlds we are in wildlife, potentially our ways of making it in some ways would be, let's get like-minded people to watch this piece of artwork, right? What consume this piece of artwork, and then there's potentially monetizationable ways for me to make a living from that, I guess. Because I know you balance, and one of the things we discussed before we started was like, how do we balance, I guess, our quote day jobs, in your case, an actual day job, in my case, like actually running a production company that has more commercial needs, I guess you could say, and then the wildlife side. How do you balance that?
Good question. I'm not going to say it's hard.
And have you figured it out?
Well, I don't think there's a rhyme and reason for it. There's definitely not a script for this. I think, I do a 8 till 4 job that, will then go from 8 till 8, or I'll do, like this weekend, I've been working this weekend, filming in the lakes from Thursday till this morning. So weekend's gone, that's fine. I, claiming back in lieu and all that stuff. But then balancing then that with a media presence on YouTube, and then marketing as well, and keeping those touch points going. and doing a third job as well as a consultant. I am a consultant as well for other networks. Is bloody hard work. And that's why I'm only doing a film a quarter. Do you know? I mean, like a full film at the moment. And I think if I wasn't doing that, I mean, I'm trying to persuade my bosses, like maybe they could, sponsor me to be one of their people. I work in the outdoor sector, so it's kind of like I'd work really hard, I promise. So, but yeah, it is hard, a really hard thing to juggle. As I say, I'd love to be able to do my full-time job and then run out a lot more content, because when you think about the edit for that, the last film I did, I'd finish my day. I wouldn't finish at 4, never finish at 4. Finish at 6, and then I've got to see my wife at some point. We'll sit down, have our dinner, and then 7:30. If we're not watching anything, I'll go up here and start editing until 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock in the morning, and then I'll wake up at 7:30, start the whole thing again, and then 1 week. It took me a week to do the Africa edit, and then took me about another week probably just to get all the bits and pieces, trailers and stuff. But yeah, it is incredibly hard. I don't know.
Do you just have to? I was going to say, do you have to be really hardworking? But yes, it's clearly the answer there. But I guess in some ways, you have to have kind of a screw loose to want to constantly like do. Because a lot of people looking at maybe what I do or what you do would say like, just do one thing and then chill out, right? A lot of people would just be like, you've got a day job, you're fine, you're good, just do that. Why do you need X, Y, Z? Do
you know what the funny thing is? Like, in the last 3 years, I've had people tell me, why am I not doing stuff on TV? Why are you not going to do TV? Why don't you go commercial? Get an agent. I love my day job, and he's my very good friend who owns the company, and I just think that what we do as a business is going to be amazing, like internationally. And I've sort of come back into the fold because I want to make that brand work in America, and then just help him grow it, but my wildlife stuff, I'm getting so many really lovely people feeding back to me saying, just make another series, make another one. When's the next one coming out? When you do? And that drives you, you know what I mean? Like when somebody does say to you, when is the next one coming out? I'd love to just say, I'm doing one right now. And then in the back of my mind, I know I'm not. I've got another 2 or 3 months until I, make another, piece. But it is a hard one to juggle. I think if anybody's out there doing it as a hobby, that's great. It's when you want to turn the leaf to then when you want to become a professional wildlife photographer, or you want to be in the Bristol team to help them make films. That isn't my thought anyway. I don't want to do that. I want to write series things where I go off, show people what they can do, and then go and do it again. That's essentially what I'm going to do. But yeah, I'm just doing that juggling thing. But you're right.
You're doing it masterfully, Simon. You're doing it masterfully.
You do have to have a screw loose, I think, because a lot of it goes on, comes onto deaf ears. A lot of it, a lot of the work that you put and love that you put into it. But I love creating. I love editing. I love filming. I love being in a while. And if I didn't have YouTube to do it, I would do it all. But maybe I'd probably do, just my own little films, and just make it a nice thing. But yeah, it's once things start changing, once those little whispers and people whispering in your ears, you should do this full time. And I'm like, well, obviously I'd love to. I have a full-time job and it's really cool.
It doesn't always need to be. Right, I think sometimes in the quote hustle culture world we have is everyone you have to have a side hustle, then you have to turn that side hustle into a full-time. No, you don't. You don't. You don't. If that's what you want to do, more power to you, and yes, you can do it, right?
Yeah.
But you don't have to, right? It's not what you have. I think you can create. My belief personally is you can create the life you want to believe. You want to live, if you're willing to put 3 years of hard work in before you get there. Right?
Yeah. I think.
So if you wanted to be a full-time YouTuber, yes, you could be a full-time YouTuber, but you would need to continue to do this for three years and make a load of other sacrifices and so on and so on.
Exactly. Yeah. I think, like you say, when you love it and you're happy with it, you go out there, you make a film, put it on YouTube. It's great, and it's you get some nice feedback. It's when you start thinking, I could do this every day of my life, which also has another negative connotation. But there's a point where you think, I want to be a professional wildlife photographer, and there's a lot of people out there who want to do that now. I did a little talk to Plymouth University, to the guys who are just really hungry to be wildlife photographers, and you can see on their their Insta profiles, they've got good eyes and they're doing good stuff, and it's lovely to see that generation going into nature. It's not just about photography, it's like the whole appreciation thing. But you have to be real with them. You have to say, it's bloody hard work to be a full-time. Where do you to make that money? You'd have to sell those images, part of those images to Getty. Those you'd have to sell to the BBC. Those you're going to have to, make 7 million calendars that everybody else has got anyway. So it's tough. But when you think about it as a hobby, it's much more enjoyable. The only difference between what I do and a hobby then is, sometimes I think actually, well, I could do with a little bit of help with the cost of getting there. And then maybe a little bit of it is, well, I'm helping them. They can help me a little bit. I'm not asking them for a 10 grand filming production budget. That's the next one. No, that is, at the moment, I'm happy to do it all for the experience. There will be a point when somebody says, well, I want an 8-part series on traveling around South America. I'll give you some free headphones, and then whatever you want. No, that's when it commercially comes in, and then you start switching on. It's like, okay, well, here's your budget, here's all my expenses. Yeah,
but I think you can have mutually, like, what I'm trying to develop the business into, like my overarching business is, I have a sector which is client based, which is that relationship, right? Someone comes to me with an idea and they say, we want to do X or Y, we've got a campaign that's doing X or Y, we're trying to do whatever it is, and they pay me to do it, or they pay me to crew it, or they pay me to be part of the production in some way or another. Cool. But then also I've got my stuff, right? I can't see a world personally where I won't be creating something. Even if I had a full-time job and I didn't run a production company and whatever, I just can't see a world where now, after doing it for so long, where I wouldn't have that itch constantly to, I've got to have this thing, I've got to have something just for me, not because I want to sell it, not because I want to do that, just to push my creative juice, whatever it is, to that little bit extra, right?
Yeah. I love that. That's good.
And
You've got to have that.
And I think I guess in some ways, if someone's listening to this and they're like, I've lost that, then that's the sign where you need to go, then you need to start questioning things, because I think at a root core, if you're a filmmaker, you should have stuff going on the other side, right? You should, if you are, say, full commercial and you're doing just commercial work, you should have a project or 2 projects or something that you're doing to keep you sharp, right? Where there's no client, where you are the client, right? Because then you can experiment, then you can try, okay, what happens if I do X or Y, right?
Yeah. That's a very good point, though, because over the last over the last year, I would say, last 12 months, I've hired 3 different cameramen for our company, and production editors. And I always look, obviously, you've got to have that drive, and you look for the energy. But I also look at the energy and what they're doing themselves. Are they making? I'm not going to drop my cameraman. One of my cameramen, he's a brilliant little cameraman, and we brought him in for social edits. He's got the eye, he's got that eye, really nice eye, good colouring, and just can make those really nice little short edits. But now films himself down the gym, which is, but he's still cinematic about it, so you can see, even though he's doing these things, and but then he is doing gym stuff as well. And so he's kind of putting his fingers into other pies, but he's being creative, and you can see that with that energy, he can put that into what we want him to be, and again, with all the other guys that we work with, it's like, I want to see that. It's not just a portfolio. It is an energy of, one of the fishing guys, he goes fishing and films himself fishing. It's not just, I'm paid to go and do a job. You've got to have passion. You've got to keep that going. If you don't have that, you can acquire that. You can make that happen. But I always look for that. The qualification almost comes second. I want them to have that spirit and the energy. But
yeah, and I think just while we wrap up, I think like using your gym analogy, he might use an angle that doesn't necessarily work when he thinks about it in what he's maybe going to do for you, but actually he'll use something. You'll go, hold on, what if we do this with a rod, or what if we do, what I mean?
Exactly.
And those other creative things that like other people wouldn't have thought of. But for those people who may be interested in the films, interested to see what you're doing next, there's definitely going to be something coming next, I'm sure. Where can people find that, Simon?
So at the moment, everything is on YouTube. I'm trying to use all the other platforms as little sort of marketing support, Instagram, Facebook. But yeah, YouTube is my main channel, and there's more coming. There is more coming. I think the more people who kind of come play in my playground, I've got the lovely Sigma, sending me lenses to play with now, and I'm talking with Sony as well, which is quite cool. And people who are actually giving me some support to go out and be that creative person. Not my full-time creative, but if I want to make a few more films, here's some spending money to go and buy the flight or to do this. And it's always money that I would reinvest into projects so that I can make things that are entertaining for others. I don't spend anything on chocolate.
Maybe a little bit.
A little bit.
Thank you so much for the time, Simon. If you were going to give yourself advice, either in wildlife or in career or anything else that you want to touch on, that maybe 5-10 years ago, what advice would you give to those watching or yourself 10 years ago?
I would say love your subject. You've got to love your subject. I think, if you get to that point in life when actually the tools that you use or the processes that you use are just, you can do that in accountancy. It's great, but that's not your subject. I don't think you're ever working to your potential. So yeah, love your subject.
Fabulous. And thank you so much for listening this far into this pilot episode. But thank you so much for watching. If you did enjoy it, why don't subscribe? I'll be posting something related to wildlife soon, I'm sure. I'm not 100% sure when this is going out and what it's going to become. But thank you so much for watching. Thank you, Simon, for the time. And I'll see you very, very soon.